Lecture number 3. The structure of the bones of the brain skull, frontal, sphenoid, occipital, parietal, ethmoid, and temporal bones of the skull. Purpose of studying the topic: to gain knowledge about the bones of the brain skull and the elements of its structure. Separate bones of the brain skull. The boundaries of the brain skull. And list of the literature.
Today we have topic number 3, skull and its structure. Firstly, general information about skull. Skull of human, it's a space for keeping of brain, first of all, organs of vision, respiratory tract, oral cavity, nasal cavity, organ of hearing, etc. It's a very important part of human body. Human of skull consists of two parts: brain skull. It means that this part contains brain, and facial skull. Facial skull, it means these bones form face of human. Facial skull. Also, human skull consists of two parts: vault, and basis of skull. So today we are going to discuss about bones of brain skull. First bone is frontal bone. Here we can see frontal bone. It's not paired bone, single bone. Here we can see it separately. It consists of 3 parts. First part is squamous part. Second, nasal part, and orbital part. Third one, orbital part. Squamous part. It has external surface and internal surface. On external surface we can see tuber frontale. In the center, glabella, and supraorbital margin with supraorbital notch, or maybe supraorbital foramen. Between squama and temporal surface, you can see temporal line, or here, temporal line. Here we can see zygomatic process. Zygomatic process connects with zygomatic bone. Here is the zygomatic process connects with zygomatic bone. Next, internal surface. Internal surface has an important structure, groove for superior sagittal sinus. And crest with foramen secum. This is small foramen secum, crest, and groove for superior sagittal sinus. So, next part, orbital part. This is orbital part, or we can see it here. This is inside orbital part of frontal bone. It's very important part because it makes upper roof or upper wall of the orbit. That is why it's important. Here we can see fovea. On lateral side we can see fovea for a lacrimal gland. And third part is nasal part. Nasal part is here. Nasal part is located between two orbital parts, and it has ethmoid notch. It's very difficult to show, but I will try. It's located inside, maybe not visible from here. Ethmoid notch, it serves to connect with ethmoidal bone. So, no, it's here. So it was frontal bone. Next, parietal bone. It's paired bones because we have two parietal bones, left and right. Here we can see it separately. It's right side. It has four margins. Frontal margin connects with frontal bone. Sagittal margin connects with another parietal bone. This is sagittal margin. Occipital margin connects with occipital bone. And squamose margin connects with temporal bone. Also it has four angles. Frontal angle, sphenoid angle, occipital angle, mastoid angle. It also has external surface and internal surface. On external surface we can see tuber of parietal bone. Inside we can see grooves for cerebral arteries, and along sagittal margin we can see groove for superior sagittal sinus. Here is groove for superior sagittal sinus. So it was information about about the parietal bone. Next, occipital bone. It's also temporal bone, but now we are going to discuss only about occipital bone. This is occipital bone, or we can see it here. Occipital bone. Occipital bone connects with parietal bone and temporal bone. Occipital bone has three parts: basilar part, lateral part, two lateral parts, here and here, and squamor. Basilar part connects with sphenoid bone. We can see it here. This is connection between basilar part of occipital bone and sphenoid bone. It has name clivus. This is clivus. On external surface we can see pharyngeal tubercle. On basilar part. Next we have two lateral parts. Lateral parts have occipital condyle, two occipital condyles, to connect with the first cervical vertebrae. There are two occipital condyles. They are connected with first cervical vertebrae. Inside of lateral part we can see hypoglossal canal. Here is hypoglossal canal. There is passage of hypoglossal nerve. Hypoglossal canal. Third, squamous part. Its largest part. It has external surface, internal surface. On external surface, we can see external occipital protuberance. From it external occipital crest and two nuchal lines, superior nuchal line and inferior nuchal line. Internal surface. It has also internal occipital protuberance, internal occipital crest, and grooves for sinuses. Groove for transverse sinus, groove for superior sagittal sinus, and partially groove for sigmoid sinus. This groove is formed by both occipital bone and temporal bone. And very important we need to say is foramen magnum. Foramen magnum. It's space for medulla oblongata, vessels and nerves. Foramen magnum. So it was information about occipital bone. Next, sphenoid bone. Sphenoid bone. It's located in the center of the basis of the skull. We can see it here. It's located here. Sphenoid bone in the center of the skull, of basis of the skull, or we can see it here. This is sphenoid bone. So sphenoid bone has three processes and body. This is body of sphenoid bone and three processes: lesser wing, greater wing, and pterygate process. Now better to see here. Pterygate process. Three processes and body. So here we can see body of sphenoid bone. Inside of body there is sphenoid sinus. Body has a cube form with 6 walls. Posterior, anterior, 2 sides, and superior and inferior walls. On superior wall we can see turcica sella. It has a hypophysis fossa for hypophysis, or we can see it here. Hypophysis fossa. It's place for hypophysis. It's very important to know for you. Next, lesser wing. There are 2 lesser wings, And inside of laser wing, it's important to say about foramen rotundum. Please see it, foramen rotundum. Here is foramen rotundum. Is it visible? Between laser wing and greater wing there is superior orbital fissure. It's a way of passage of nerves and vessels. Superior orbital fissure. Greater wing. Great wing has several surfaces. Orbital surface. It forms orbit. Temporal surface. It forms temporal fossa. Brain surface, located inside of the skull. And maxilla surface. Maxilla surface. So, greater wing, as we said before, has 4 surfaces and 3 openings or 3 foramens. Firstly, foramen rotundum, foramen ovale, and this is small foramen spinosus. Foramen spinosus. These foramens serve to pass nerves and vessels. And third process is pterygoid process. Pterygoid process. It consists of 2 laminas, medial lamina and lateral lamina. Between them, pterygoid fossa. Pterygoid fossa. In the basis of pterygoid process, there is pterygoid canal. Here we can see pterygoid canal. Pterygoid canal. Also, let's see another information about body of sphenoid bone. There is anterior wall. Here we can see crest, and entrance or openings of sphenoid sinus. Sphenoid sinus is connected with nasal cavity. Here we can see it's better. Sphenoid sinus connects with nasal cavity. So let's repeat all foramens of sphenoid bone again. Firstly, optic canal inside of laser wing. Between laser and greater wing, superior ophthalmic fissure. In greater wing, 3 foramens: foramen rotundum, ovale, and spinosus. And in the basis of pterygoid process, pterygoid canal. So it was sphenoid bone. Next bone is temporal bone. This is temporal bone. It's left side. Let's see here. Temporal bone. And also here. This is all temporal bone. Temporal bone consists of 3 parts. 3 parts. First, petrous part. Petrous part. Second, tympanic part. Tympanic part. And squamous part. Squamous part. Firstly, let's discuss about petrous part. Petrous part, it's internal part of temporal bone. It has 3 margins and 3 surfaces. It has a form of pyramid. It has apex here, And as we said before, three surfaces: anterior surface, posterior surface, and inferior surface is located on the basis of skull. Anterior and posterior surfaces are located inside of the skull. So on anterior surface we can see trigeminal impression. It's location of trigeminal ganglion. Next we can see arcuate eminence. Next, on posterior margin we can see groove for superior petrosal sinus. On posterior surface we can see opening of internal acoustic meatus. It's passageway of facial and vestibulocochlear nerves. Internal acoustic meatus opening. Next, on inferior surface, first of all, we can see opening of carotid canal. It's passageway of carotid artery, carotid canal. It goes inside of petrosal part and opens here. Opens here on the apex of petrosal part. So from here, from basis, it goes inside of the skull. Next, here we can see also stylomastate foramen on inferior surface. It's a place of exit of facial nerve. Let's see the same here. This is inferior surface of temporal bone and carotid canal opening. And this is stylomastate foramen. So inside of petrosal part there is location of hearing organ, tympanic cavity. That is why it's a very important part, because inside is hearing organ location. Next part, tympanic part. Tympanic part surrounds external acoustic meatus opening. So here we can see opening of external acoustic meatus, and around of it is tympanic part. Here is mastate process. Mastate process inside is filled by air spaces. It's not only bone tissue. Inside is filled by air. It's mastate process. The same we can see here. Tympanic part and mastate process. And third part of temporal bone is squamous part. Squamous part is connected with parietal bone. It has zygomatic process that is connected with zygomatic bone. Here we can see mandibular fossa for connection with mandible. Mandibular fossa with articular tubercle. So it was information about temporal bone. So, and one else final brain bone, bone of brain skull is ethmoid bone. Ethmoid bone is located here. It's not shown, but it's located here inside of ethmoid notch of frontal bone. So this is place of ethmoid bone. It has two main parts. Perpendicular plate. Here we can see it. Here. This is perpendicular plate. It's part of nasal septum. It goes down from up to the down. Perpendicular plate. And cribriform plate. Cribriform plate. You can see it inside. Cribriform plate. It's located here. I hope you see. Because it's located inside of ethmoid notch of frontal bone. It has a name cribriform because it has many openings to provide nasal nerves. To provide not nasal nerves, to provide olfactory nerves from nasal cavity to inside of skull. And third part of ethmoid bone, it's nasal concha. Nasal concha, it's located inside of nasal cavity, filled by air. So, thank you for your attention. It was information about bones of brain skull. Goodbye.